Hello everybody. I wanted to give you a quick overview of the Wedge-Pro sleds and a setup video. So we currently have 3 sleds. We have the original Wedge-Pro 1, which has a single fence and a single clamp arm with the sweeper. We have the Wedge-Pro 2, which has 2 fences and a dual acting clamp. And we have the Wedge-Pro plate, which has 2 fences and no clamps or sweeper. This is just more of a traditional 2-fence sled. And we offer a Wedge-Pro Material Stop with a locking cam handle. And the Material Stop has double bearings on the end so that you can use it for thin ripping. All the units are sold separately. We don't do any kits anymore. And you can buy the sled and the Material Stop together, but we just don't offer them for a single price. When you get started with the setup, you have your miter bar, which is phenolic, which is super durable. And on the edge, there are 3 brass grub screws. What these do is they allow you to adjust the fit in your miter slot. So most American saws are 3/4 inch miter widths. A lot of European saws are more of a 5/8 or a 16 millimeter. And the phenolic allows you to cut down to what you need. We just need to make sure that when you cut, that you don't take all the material off of one side, that you cut half of it on one side and half on the other so that your hole stays centered. If you need to adjust those grub screws, there's a 3/32 Allen key that is included with the hardware pack. So first you want to take your miter bar and put it in your slot and adjust it so that there's no wiggle. We also have a new setup guide that uses a 3D printed bracket and a sacrificial piece of wood, and this replaces the original setup guide that used corian, which is acrylic. That was more of a single use and it was very fragile. To set this up, take your setup guide and put it in your miter slot and adjust the 2 screws so that it doesn't have any wiggle or rotation, and then screw your piece of wood on the face of that just so it comes over the blade a little bit. We're going to end up cutting that after it's secured. There are 2 screws that come in the setup guide, and you can take those out. They come in this hole right here, and then you take those out and attach them to the face of the wood. After you attach that piece of wood, raise your blade, and then you just want to slowly go through and cut the end of that wood off, and it gives you a clean reference on the end. The next thing to do is to take your sled and loosely attach the miter bar on the back side. You want the miter bar to be loose initially so that you can make the adjustments. Since you've already made the cut on your setup guide, you know where the blade is going to enter. And on the sled, there is a notch in the base. This sled has already been cut, but there is a notch in the base, and you will align that notch with the end of that cut you made on the setup guide. And then just bring the sled tight to that setup guide, and then tighten your miter bar mounting screws. Set the setup guide aside, and then you will raise your blade and you will slowly cut through the sled, which then gives you that 0 clearance cut. And then after you get the setup done, take your strip and you set the Material Stop up next. After the sled is set up, just set it aside. And your Material Stop, you will adjust it so that the slider is referenced at 0. It has a positive stop on it. And then you want to take your setup guide that you used for the sled and turn it around the other way and put it up against your material stop, and that guarantees your material stop is perpendicular to the blade. Then you want to adjust the material stop so that it also goes over the blade just a little bit. Then tighten up the material stop. Move your setup guide away, raise your blade, and then you want to cut the tip of your material stop off. The purpose of that is it gives you a 0 reference cut, and so then when you need to use the material stop to cut segments, you can use the graduated ruler that's on the slider. You just set it to whatever you want. During the setup process, you may need to adjust the sled. It's only a one-time adjustment, and what you will do is you will shim the setup. You will not shim the sled. The sled does not need to have any shims. What you will do is you will first cut a sample ring. Put your wood on there, make a first cut to give you an angle, and then discard the first cut. And then you will turn it over and you will touch your material stop. And then after every cut, you will flip your piece. And I recommend starting with a 6-segment ring. You will make a 6-segment ring, and then you will put the ring together, assemble it, and see if you have any gaps. If you have any gaps, there is 2 different theories on how to fix that. One of them is if the gaps are on the outside of the ring, you shim the sled one direction. If the gaps are on the inside of the ring, you shim it another direction. And those are clearly defined in the instructions. And when you do the shimming, this is just a temporary shim. It is not permanent. And what you will do is you will take the shims based on where those gaps are in your rings, and you will shim the setup guide with some pieces of paper. I recommend starting with 5 pieces of notebook paper, and you will shim the sled up against the setup guide. You will loosen your mounting screws, and then you will slowly bring that towards the setup guide with your shims on one side or the other. Slowly and slightly tweak the angle, and then retighten these. Remove your shims in the setup guide, and then cut another test ring. Once the setup has been confirmed and you have tight rings, make sure that your mounting screws are tight, and you won't have to do that adjustment anymore as long as the sled stays on that saw. The sled is created and cut on a CNC machine, but the miter slots based in relation to the blade may vary slightly from manufacturer to manufacturer. But once you do the setup, shimming that guide, the sled will be good forever. The Wedge-Pro 2 and the Wedge-Pro plate that have 2 fences, they don't technically need to be set up because the fences are opposing, and they will auto-correct if the setup is incorrect. But I do recommend that you still go through the same process with both of those sleds in case you ever decide to remove one of the sleds, which would then allow you to cut a deeper segment. You will be accurate. It just takes literally 5 minutes. Most people have to shim it one time, and they're done, and then you can move forward. When you're actually using the sled, on the single fence sled, after every cut, you have to rotate the piece of stock. You just move your clamp and rotate your stock. It's very important that both sides of your strip be parallel for the single fence. If you don't do that with your single fence sled, you will have incorrect cuts. For the Wedge-Pro 2 and the Wedge-Pro plate, when you're cutting, you put the strip on and you hold the strip tight with one hand. After you make the cut, you do not flip it. You pick it up and you move it to the other fence, and you hold it the same way, and you go through your cut, and then you just move back and forth, back and forth. For the material stop, it has a locking cam lever, so it will slide in your miter slot, and then once you're happy with the location, just push down on that cam handle, and that locks it in place. When you want to use the thin ripping jig, you will move it to the opposite side of your fence, and then adjust it so that your fence, this comes in to the left side of your blade, and then as you cut your strips, they will come away from the blade. And your thin rip jig never goes close to the blade. After you set how thick you want your rip to be, you will tighten up your screws and the knob, and then you will bring this forward. It needs to be clear of the blade. Then you lock it down and set your fence each time for the thickness of your remaining stock. If you have any questions, you can always use the contact form on the website to contact me.